Non-Monogamy Help is a podcast where your questions about open, non-monogamous or polyamorous relationships are answered. Our host, Lola Phoenix, will consult a licensed therapist with over a decade of experience to address your problems. Names and locations have been changed or censored to keep your questions anonymous. You're listening to Non-Monogamy Help, the podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Non-Monogamy Help. I'm Lola Phoenix. Non-Monogamy Help is a relationship advice podcast for people in non-monogamous, polyamorous, and open relationships that comes out every other week. So if you would like your question answered on the podcast, it's also a column. So the columns come out on alternate weeks as the podcast. One day I'm gonna come up with like a really great way of saying that isn't so awkward. Anyway, if you would like your question answered, you can send it to nonmonogamyhelp@gmail.com, and it'll either be in the podcast or the column, good grief, the podcast or the column anonymously, and you can indicate if you'd prefer it to be in the podcast or the column if you'd like. No worries. If you would like to read the column, and I also post the podcast episodes there, you can get it at medium.com/non-monogamy-help. If you would like to get the columns and the podcasts in your inbox and you can't be bothered with Medium or subscribing to something else, you can subscribe to the email newsletter at tinyletter.com/non-monogamy-help, no hyphens. And you can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/non-monogamy-help to post the columns and the podcasts there. I'm going to call them columns because then it's like a combination of podcast and column. Anyway, you can also become a patron of the podcast, which is amazing and awesome, and even for $1 a month. It's super helpful and super supportive, helps pay for hosting, all sorts of fun things, and in addition to getting the look, I'm trying to say column, literally trying to say column. In addition to getting the podcast and the column before anyone else does, about 4 days before anyone else, you also get other fiction-y bits that I write, and copies of my zines, all sorts of other good stuff as well. So it's a good shout. And if you donate $5 or more per month, then I'm going to read your name at the end of the podcast if you consent to that and you're cool with it. I'll read any name that you'd like. So usually if someone donates $5 or more, I contact them and we arrange that. So, sound good? Good. Right, let's get to this week's letter. And just a note on this week's letter, I do think it's written from a person where English isn't their fluent language, so that's why some of the grammar might be a bit odd when I read it. So just as a note. Okay, let's get to it. I've been in a relationship with my partner for not so long. At the beginning, it was like any new relationship, and during that time, he basically said that he had the same beliefs regarding relationships, love, and marriage. He knows I come from a very traditional religious family. After some time, he started telling me his expectations on how his ideal partner should be, then says that it didn't matter if there was love, and eventually evolved to him telling me that he doesn't believe in monogamous love, but polyamory, and he hasn't even tried it before. He was certain that he could love the same way multiple people and that he wants to try that, and that he has seen friends who tried it and it looked good. It does go against my values and beliefs, so I wouldn't try it, and he wants to do it, and I don't know what should I do. It makes me doubt if he actually cares about me, because polyamory sounds to me like a lazy way of getting what you want from different people without having to make any real effort in any specific relationship to make it work, since you just go to another one to fill the need you have, or at least that's what he said. So there's a couple of things. I find it's really funny when I read polyamory sounds like a lazy way of getting what you want. It's really funny, because I think there's I don't know if it's a coined phrase or if it's a common saying, because I don't really hang out in a lot of polyamory communities anymore, but it's sort of a phrase that people like to use as polymon, which is like Pokemon, but with polyamory in it, and it's the idea of like that you're just collecting people. And I do think, to be fair, that there are some people who do, and I've mentioned this a lot before on the column and on the podcast, people who are polyamorous because they can have multiple shallow relationships where they don't have to put in any emotional labor into anyone, and they can just kind of go from person to person having a good time and not be responsible. They don't tend to want to take responsibility in any of the relationships that they have for anyone's kind of emotional growth or anything. They're just kind of in it for the fun of it, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But I tend to feel like from the letters that I get that these kind of people end up hurting a lot of people, because some people are in relationships for fun. Some people don't need to have relationships for that. And I think it's just a miscommunication and a misunderstanding between people of what a relationship is. Because I think when you talk about polyamory, like the big thing that a lot of polyamorous people try to say is, especially when they compare it against swinging, is that it's about relationships and it's about love. But what constitutes a relationship really differs from person to person. Like, it's one thing between me and my domestic partner is that people that I would consider that they are dating and that are my partner's partners. My partner doesn't really consider them to be partners. Not to say that my partner doesn't care about them, but clearly we have a very difference of opinion of what a relationship is and what it means and what people do in them. And it can be so variant on person to person that it's almost kind of a little bit meaningless to try and make this big distinction between polyamory and swinging in that regard. And if that's the way that your boyfriend wants to do things, then that's the way he wants to do things. Essentially, unfortunately, you're at kind of an impasse. That's completely, unless you or he changes his mind, it's just not something that you can get around. You don't seem to be open to trying it. It's not something that interests you. It actually goes against the values and beliefs that you have. And so fundamentally, there really isn't anything you can do. And it sounds like your boyfriend is still trying to figure out, what he wants out of life. And that's fine. Like, a lot of people are in that stage of their life, and there's nothing wrong with that. And this happens all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean that anyone's in the wrong or that anyone has done anything bad. It's just sometimes we have different experiences in our life where we discover things about ourselves and we decide to go a different way on things. So I do think that in terms of what you should do, I think you should unfortunately break up and find someone who does have whatever it is that you're interested in, or whatever relationship matches the values and beliefs that are important to you. Unless you are in any way interested in trying out polyamory or non-monogamy, I don't think there's a point in trying to convince him otherwise, because the thing of it is that, he might try it and he might decide it's not for him. I think it's easy enough to see people who, think about it in terms of monogamy. Like, you see a lot of people, monogamy works really great for them. You see a lot of people, it doesn't work great for them. It's hard to say just from seeing people who try it and it works for them that it would work for you, but he wants to try it out. I would encourage him in general, like, if he does listen to this and is going to try out polyamory, I think that one thing I'd encourage him is just to try to stop having these ideal beliefs. Like, it seems like he's trying very hard to think about things less in a try and see way and more in a what he believes in. Monogamous love works for some people. Some people are monogamous. I think people who say, and I've written a column about this before, one of my hugest pet peeves are people who say they don't believe in monogamy outside, like when they apply that outside of their own lives. It's quite alright to say that monogamy doesn't work for you as an individual, but to sort of make some grand gesture that applies to, 7 billion human beings just because it doesn't work for you is just absolutely preposterous. There's literally billions of people on the planet. The idea that one thing works the same exact way for every single person all the time is just a little bit silly, and it's just not realistic. And it's, monogamy does work for some people, and it's a valid life choice for plenty of people. I really, really get annoyed, and I really don't want your boyfriend to become another one of these people where they're so sold on what sounds very cultish in a lot of writings about polyamory, where it's, endorsing polyamory as not just a relationship style, but as some kind of weird culty way of life that's enlightened and above anyone who's monogamous. It really drives me absolutely up the frickin' wall because it's just not true. You don't have to go to any lengths in order to be polyamorous. All you have to do is say you're polyamorous. You don't have to pass a test. You don't have to get a license. You don't have to go on a spiritual journey. You don't have to be good at communication. You don't have to be good at anything. And regardless of how many people want to argue that, oh, well, polyamory causes you to have to communicate. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It really depends on the person, depends on their relationships. There are certain things that, experiences that you will have. It's just like there are probably different ways of coping that you would know if you skydived than if you didn't skydive. But it doesn't mean that if you haven't skydived, then you don't have any coping skills. And just the way that people act like polyamory is some type of, 12-step program for improving everyone's life and being some type of, this is the way humans are, or what. It's honestly, the amount of BS never ends, in my opinion, when it comes to some of the stuff you read. It's fine for him to not want to be monogamous himself, but monogamous love does exist. It's valid. It's a thing that people want. It's a thing that plenty of people end up in very, if you want to count a relationship success by, how long people have it, or the fact that no one escapes it alive, or, one person ends up dying in it. If that's what you want to measure a relationship success as, there are many, many, many successful monogamous relationships. And just, I think he should nip that in the bud if he's listening to this. I don't know if he's going to listen to this, but it's just something that I definitely have to comment on, because if you do kind of come to the decision that it's something you want to try, I don't want you to end up dealing with people who make you feel bad about monogamy being your choice, because it's a valid choice and there's nothing wrong with it. I don't know what beliefs and values you necessarily hold that would indicate that polyamory is wrong in comparison with them. I think those are worth examining and challenging, because I do kind of feel that some of the things that people attach onto monogamy, which I don't think are inherent to monogamy, can sometimes actually be really toxic for monogamous people. There is a lot of things that our culture attributes, and I don't know if you share the same culture, I'm assuming, could be wrong, but, jealousy, for example, as a sign of love. People being angry at someone else paying attention to you is passed off as this noble thing. Like, oh, it's good that if your partner is angrily jealous of someone else talking to you because it shows that they love you, when it's actually very possessive and controlling behavior. And that type of casual acceptance of that behavior leads to the abuse when it escalates into abuse being normalized in society, which is a problem. So I do think that, I'm not sure what values or beliefs you're referring to, but I do think it's worth you thinking about, because there isn't anything inherently wrong with polyamory either. People do and can love more than one person, and your issue in terms of feeling like it makes me doubt if he actually cares about me, and it's kind of a lazy way of getting what you want from different people. It's really hard, actually. Like, there are some people, and we make that kind of funny joke about polymon and the idea of people trying to collect people. And generally speaking, those kind of people who just date as many people as possible just tend to have a very low threshold of what they consider dating or what they consider a relationship, which is, up to them, and I'm not judging that. But having multiple relationships is hard work. If you actually provide support and care for someone as a partner, as a romantic partner, or whatever, however you want to do it, just like, having friendships and having a lot of deep friendships can be a lot of hard work if people need you. It really depends on the person. So I don't think that it's that your partner doesn't care about you. People are interested in polyamory for all sorts of reasons, and I think we make this assumption that because monogamy sells you this idea that, your true love and your soulmates and you complete each other and all this sorts of stuff. And that, in a way, is kind of harmful for monogamous people, because it gives them a false expectation, because monogamy is hard work too. It's all relationships are hard work, especially the more you're kind of living together all the time and being around each other all the time. That can be hard work, regardless of whether you're monogamous or polyamorous. And so I think that people get this feeling that, oh, well, if my partner wants to date other people, then I must not be enough. And I've talked about this on the podcast and the columns before, but it's not really how it works. Just like if someone has one kid, they don't have another kid because one kid wasn't enough. That's just not how, you don't have one best friend and then decide to meet other people or make new friends because having that one friend isn't enough. Like, it's just not how it works. It's not a matter of whether or not one person is enough or not. It's different people bring different things into your life, and that's why you have more than one friend. That's why, you don't say to your one parent, you say to the other parent, oh, well, one parent's enough, thanks, I don't need you, bye. It's different people bring different things into your life, and as long as, you can have a lot of stable, really loving relationships, whether they're romantic relationships or friendships. I think one of the things that I really like about polyamory is that it encourages me to rethink my assumptions about which relationships are or should be valued. I think our society encourages us to see romantic relationships as the most important relationships and other relationships as less important, which I don't think is the case. I think friendships are extremely important and very undervalued in our society. So, I think that you're making the assumption about, your boyfriend's motivations behind polyamory, and also kind of about the way people do it. I don't doubt, in all honesty, that there are some people, and maybe your boyfriend is one of them, who see polyamory as just a collect them all thing where they can have one person for each need they have, and if if it works for them and that's how they want to do it, and they're not hurting anyone, and they're very clear about the expectations, then I think that's fine. I think it becomes a problem when someone is, there's a miscommunication about what a relationship means, and someone is expecting emotional support and not getting it from someone because that person's kind of just there for the fun of it. That's when there's problems. But I think it doesn't really matter, like, whether your boyfriend could honestly care. You can mean the world to him, you could mean the world to him, and if you have this fundamental difference of compatibility, which is he wants to try polyamory and you don't, not only do you not want to try it, but it's actually against your values and beliefs, and there isn't really anything that you can do about that. I think, unfortunately, in this case, it's quite simple. You just have to break up. Yeah. I wouldn't encourage you to go against your values and beliefs to save a relationship. I think if that's honestly how you feel, then that's how you feel, and that's valid. So, yeah, that's kind of like the only thing that I can really suggest if you're really against even trying it. If you do change your mind about that, I would encourage you to think about the reasons you'd be interested in non-monogamy if you wanted to, and not just do it for the sake of one person. Or look, there are a lot of probably things written online about monogamous people who are in polyamorous relationships, like where they're monogamous with one partner but that partner sees other people. That's a thing that can happen, and I've seen happen reasonably successfully, however we want to define success in relationships. So it is a possibility, but at this point, yeah, I think if you're really against it, there really isn't anything you can do but go your separate ways. And don't, it's better to actually go your separate ways on a positive, and more or less like on a both coming to a realization that you just have a basic incompatibility, instead of trying something and you both getting hurt and then separating on a bad note. I think, yeah, better to separate now instead of waiting until it explodes, more or less. I'm sorry I don't have better things to say or better ways you can work around it, but I really think that's probably for the best. And I hope this helps, and good luck. Thank you so much for listening to Non-Monogamy Help. Yeah, just a reminder again, if you want to be super awesome, I would really appreciate it if you would consider becoming a patron. It's really helpful for me. It's like, it's not only just like, because obviously hosting the podcast costs money, but, and also the way I manage social media costs a little bit of money to kind of effectively plan things in a way that doesn't impact my mental health really negatively. So if there's even just like $1 a month is like contributory towards the whole thing, but it also kind of just makes me feel a bit encouraged in that this is a useful tool for you, or that you enjoy it, and I always welcome for my patrons to kind of send me feedback, make requests, things like that. I always welcome their opinions and advice on things. So yeah, I'd really, really appreciate it if you'd become a patron. And if you are a patron who donates $5 or more, then your name gets to be read at the end of the podcast, and I'm going to read those now. At the time of recording, the patrons are Laura Boylan, Chris Albury Jones, Franzi, and James Wartell. Thank you, folks, so much for being patrons. I really, really appreciate it. Anyway, yeah, so that's episode 19. I'm doing the seasons in episodes of 10. I don't know if you noticed. So, yeah, the next episode will be the last in season 2. And then I'll probably have a bit of a break. And then it'll be the 3rd season. Yeah, it'll be a few months. It's not quite yet going to be a year since I started the podcast, but it'll be coming up on that in a few months. So that'll be exciting. I'll try and think of something interesting to do for the year celebration if I can. But otherwise, yeah, I just appreciate everyone continuing to listen, like, honestly. And if you have any ability to give a rating, sorry if you've been hearing sirens occasionally. I am still recording it in my flat. Yeah, if you have the ability to give a rating, I would super, super appreciate it, especially on iTunes or anywhere. I don't know of all the places that there are ratings possible. So yeah, if you can give a rating, share it on social media. On Twitter, it's Non-Monogamy Help, no hyphens. All of that is really, really appreciated. And yeah, just taking some extra time out this time around to say thank you so much for listening and being awesome and supportive. Yeah, I keep saying I will see you next week. One day I will stop saying that. You will hear the next episode the week after next, or whenever it comes out again. It's like Microsoft, just comes out whenever. No, I do have a schedule. It is scheduled. It's not just random, I promise. Anyway, thank you so much. Bye. You've been listening to Non-Monogamy Help. Our podcast music has been provided by Chris Albury Jones at albury-jones.com, and the art was made by Dom Jung at domduong.com. Thank you for listening.